Mr. President, before starting the series of speeches that are scheduled for this afternoon, I have a resolution observing the 5th anniversary of the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol at the desk, and I would like to call up for a passage by unanimous consent. The resolution is straightforward. It simply says that the January 6th Capitol attack was an assault on our democracy, that the United States Capitol Police and other law enforcement personnel who defended the Capitol were heroes, and that we as a body express our gratitude to all the dedicated personnel of the United States Capitol for their service that day. I believe in a bipartisan spirit, it would be a great symbol of our congressional unity to pass it today on the 5th anniversary of January 6th. So, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 574, that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Mr. President.
The senator from Alabama.
Reserving the right to object. You know, January 6th was my first day on the job here in the United States Senate. Come to think of it, it was the first day of the year and started a huge disaster for the next 4 years. I sat right over there. And again, it was my first time on the Senate floor. One of the first things I heard from my Democratic colleagues after we returned to the floor that same night, after being taken and hidden out for a few hours, was this was the worst disaster and was even worse than Pearl Harbor. By the way, that was a real attack that killed 2,403 Americans. And I thought at that time, are you kidding me? What are we talking about here? And then almost immediately afterwards, those same Democrats that said this about Pearl Harbor, they came after all of us Republicans that said this January the 6th attack was racist. And, you know, I didn't understand that. Being first day here, I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, I thought we're all in this together. They know dang well this wasn't a racist attack, but it was just something that they wanted to use. But they never miss an opportunity to paint somebody a racist, you know, when it comes to the Democrats. So, January the 6th had nothing to do with racism. Let's be clear what happened that day. Democrats in the deep state hate Donald Trump so much that they helped orchestrate a coup against our government. It's been looked at, vilified, and the information that we found today is just amazing. And it first started with the tampering of the 2020 presidential election results to oust President Trump and to install a different type of government. As a result, great American patriots gathered in Washington to peacefully protest the illegal tampering of the election of 2020. When the leader of the Democratic Party at that time, Nancy Pelosi, in the deep state, learned of Trump supporters coming to Washington, D.C., which, by the way, was hundreds of thousands of people, they started and got an idea. Now, again, this has all been proven. They decided to infiltrate the crowd with Antifa and intelligent community members who would stir up trouble. The FBI has confirmed that there were 274 FBI agents in plain clothes in the Capitol here that day. Then they set up Capitol Police by failing and refusing President Trump's offer to bring in National Guard as backup. They turned it down. I interact with the Capitol Hill Police here every day. They're brave men and women who work tirelessly to help keep us all safe. But they were set up to fail by the Democrats that day. And then, of course, Democrats placed all the blame on President Trump and the Republicans for everything that happened that day and afterwards. They had the majority. Nancy Pelosi spearheaded the true insurrection that day. This has all been proven true, and she even admitted responsibility for the massive security failures of that day. But Democrats' plan to destroy President Trump and his supporters, it didn't end on that January the 6th, 2021. For the next 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats did everything they could do, everything, to arrest, harass, bankrupt, deplatform, and kill President Trump. Not to mention the hundreds of innocent, patriotic Americans who sat behind bars for the past 5 years over this made-up witch hunt. That is one of the most embarrassing things that I've seen since I've been here. Thankfully, most of them now have been released. You know, conveniently, the Biden DOJ neglected to investigate members of the intelligence community for their treasonous involvement in the events of January 6th. It was very convenient. As a matter of fact, they never brought the guy in who was in charge of Capitol Hill Police for an interview. They never wanted to talk to him. He was in charge of Capitol Hill Police because he knew the truth. Still today, Democrats are trying to rewrite the true events of that history. They keep mentioning all these Capitol Police who were supposedly died on January 6th. Now, don't get me wrong. We have brave people that work in this building. But this was made up, and it continued to be made up. The only person who died on January 6th was Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed Air Force veteran who was shot that day in this building. Recently, Senate Democrats attempted to strip Ashley Babbitt of her military funeral honors. Now, why would they do that? Ashley Babbitt was wrongfully killed on January the 6th, 2021. The federal government admitted it, and they paid money to her family as part of legal settlement. Interesting. But Democrats, they don't care about the truth. Today is a reminder that radical Democrats in the deep state, they don't like our country the way we run it too much, and they will do whatever it takes to try to make the Republican Party and President Trump look bad. Unfortunately for them, the American people aren't buying it. 77 million people came to the rescue of our country a year ago, November. 77 million people. And that is why President Trump is back in the White House. And thank God he is. So no, we don't need a resolution condemning the attack on the Capitol on January the 6th. In fact, the only thing we should be doing is condemning Nancy Pelosi's role in setting up the government orchestration and orchestrated the hoax of January the 6th. So before I object, I want to turn and yield the floor over to my colleague from West Virginia.
Mr.
President,
The senator from West Virginia.
I reserve my right to object. I'd like to start by just saying just a few comments, and that is just this. I think about my good friend, my colleague from the great state of Alabama. He's a patriot. He's a good man. He's a man full of common sense. He's a man that absolutely cannot stand wasting time. He can't stand worthless grandstanding, and neither can I. I didn't come here for that. He'll be a great, great governor. You know, I had 8 years of serving the great people of West Virginia. It was the honor of my life. We approach things the same way in a lot of ways. You know, we're both coaches. We tease each other that we're the best 2 coaches in the U.S. Senate. We're the only 2 coaches in the U.S. Senate, but we still think we're the best. You know, we concentrate on things like moving the ball forward, don't we? We absolutely listen to our team. We listen to voters. We listen to who I always call the voters as Toby and Edith. This is a gigantic distraction, again, by the Democrats just because they hate our great president beyond all good sense. When are they ever going to get over hating Donald Trump? Now, you know me well enough to know that I speak the truth. and I know the Trump family, and I know President Trump really well. I've seen Eric Trump underneath my vehicle changing the tire on my vehicle so far back in the woods that you can't imagine how far away we were. They're good people, and they're a good family, and God knows what he's achieved is off the chart. It is so good, it is unflat believable. Today, what we see is, again, the Democrats grasping at straws, doing stuff absolutely to try to make a scene. That's what this is all about. For God's sakes, 11, President Trump was elected unbelievably. Why in the world are we not moving on? Why in the world do we continue to waste more and more time? Is it any wonder why we earned a badge of courage, 14% approval rating, and we still won't do anything about it? We need to do things. We need to really get stuff done here. We need to help our farmers. And I'm sure my colleague from Alabama will help a lot of great farmers in the state of Alabama soon. We need to help our families. We need to make American lives better and better. And in my opinion, America needs to lead the world. And that's what we're doing today. Instead of the world absolutely leading us, we're doing what the world wants us to do. We're stepping up. We're leading the world. Again, I want to thank you, Senator Tuberville, in every way, and to my Democrat colleagues that I respect more than you know in all ways, and I think that's how we all should be. Please, let's stop wasting time. And please, let's stop this unnecessary and totally useless grandstanding politics. We got to stop this. This is a total waste of time.
Mr.
Is there an
President,
objection?
Mr. President,
The senator from Alabama.
for those reasons, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President.
The senator from California.
Mr. President, I rise today joined by Democratic Leader Schumer and so many of our colleagues in raising our voices on this 5th anniversary of a dark day in American history. Yes, it's been 5 years, and some on the other side of the aisle may ask, why are we still talking about this? I think we just witnessed why it's important to keep talking about this, because the lies continue, the conspiracy theories continue, and the truth must be told. We will not let history be rewritten. The truth is that 5 years ago today, insurrectionists stormed the Capitol in an unprecedented attempt to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. The truth is, police were beaten as a violent crowd surged forward. The truth is, there was members of Congress literally running for their lives, rushed out of this very chamber and told to hide and barricade themselves. It was an attack instigated and fueled by lies, a coordinated campaign by President Trump to overturn the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Now, even on that day, as rioters threatened to hang Vice President Pence, Trump tweeted a message to them that the election had been stolen, that they were, quote, patriots, his words, not mine, that he, quote, loved them as the violence erupted. Special Counsel Jack Smith recently testified that, quote, President Trump was the most culpable and most responsible person in this January 6th conspiracy. He continued, quote, these crimes were committed for his benefit. The attack that happened at the Capitol does not happen without him, end quote. Now, despite the president's attempts to rewrite history today, for the sake of our democracy and for the sake of future generations, we remember and highlight the truth. See, we all vividly remember where we were 5 years ago. Unlike most of my colleagues who will speak, I was not in this chamber 5 years ago. I was still serving as California Secretary of State at the time, where I have spent years working to keep our elections not just accessible for all eligible voters, but safe and secure, which they have always been despite the claims of the president. On November 3rd, 2020, it was my privilege to serve as Chief Elections Officer in our nation's most populous and diverse state. And I assure you that even under the best of circumstances, election administrations are complex operations. But in 2020, our election workers faced the additional unprecedented challenge of a global health crisis. And those election workers stepped up, they rose to the occasion. And as a result, California election officials and volunteers administered an extremely accessible, secure, and safe election that drew historic turnout. And we saw similar electoral performance across the country. He didn't just refuse to concede the election, he filed and lost more than 60 frivolous lawsuits challenging the election. He personally called state elections officials, including, as I know you remember, the Georgia Secretary of State, asking him to find more votes. He also called state legislative leaders in Michigan, in Arizona, and Pennsylvania, trying to pressure them to change the official vote results. And he lied to the American people, denying his loss. To a room full of House Republicans, calling the 2020 presidential election rigged. Online and across the country, President Trump's big lie caught fire, and clearly it's still burning. And sadly, many Republicans participated in fanning the flames, spreading false claims of voter fraud for political gain. Others have stood by silently as President Trump radicalized his supporters with these lies. They chose loyalty to Trump over the truth, and our nation paid the price. On January 6th, we witnessed